Another major impact, of course, of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is the impact on the sports world. All eyes this week focused on what will happen with the sale of Premier League club Chelsea FC. To talk more about the latest developments is i24 News producer and sports contributor Joe Brown. Joe, good to have you here in the studio. What is the latest on this sale? Abramovich needs to sell it, his club. Well, when's it going to actually be sold?
Well, Abramovich needs to get this sold as soon as possible. He's had numerous bids coming in. He personally values the club at £3 billion. However, most people aren't willing to spend that much. We've heard numerous names being flown around from all over the globe. We've had Swiss, we've had Saudi, American, but the main thing is that he needs to get this done realistically as soon as he can before the full sanctions come into effect on him.
Well, what's the rush? What's closing in on him?
Well, next week, a new bill will be passed through UK Parliament. At the moment, UK have only sanctioned 13 Russian oligarchs, which is much less than the US and the EU have both sanctioned over 100. And this bill will most likely try and seize as much of Roman Abramovich's assets as possible. And he has quite an affinity for Chelsea. He's been with them for 20 years. He's given them their best ever period. And he wants to sell it to somebody who he can trust, really. And he wants to get this done before the UK government takes away his assets and takes away anything to do with Chelsea.
Well, so you mentioned, that he wants to sell. He is valuing his club at £3 billion, but he needs to sell quickly. These potential owners, you mentioned there's an American, the owner of an American NFL team, Swiss, Irish owners. Everyone is interested from around the world. Can't they wait this out? I mean, they know that the sanctions are coming. Perhaps, the longer they wait, the better the value will be for them.
I suppose that the longer they wait, the value will depreciate. However, the early bird catches the worm. Chelsea are very much they're a global brand, and the reason why Roman Abramovich bought Chelsea in the first place was because he wanted to have a stake on the international stage, so that if something like this were to happen, his assets would be protected. He has the fans of Chelsea who care about what happens to his money, so as a result, he is basically just trying to keep it for as long as he can, but whoever takes it, they will have to be somebody who will come there quite quickly and who will be able to put in the financial input that is needed to sustain Chelsea.
Well, other Premier League clubs and their owners, what do they have to say about all of this?
Well, most clubs have remained quite quiet because they've wanted to try and keep away from the political aspect of it. But one person who has decided to make a comment is Amanda Staveley, who is the co-owner of Newcastle United, and she said that it is a shame that Abramovich has had to give up his football club, who he spent 20 years and over £2 billion on, because of something that's happened outside of his club. And what's interesting with her saying that is the fact that Newcastle are predominantly owned by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, and they have come under criticism for using Newcastle as what's known as sportswashing. Sportswashing is where you buy a sports club, or in this case a football club, who by putting in a lot of money into the club and into the city, people forget your other crimes. So this has happened with Newcastle United, with Saudi Arabia. It's also happened with PSG and Qatar, and with Chelsea. I've seen this a lot on social media. A lot of Chelsea fans have said, do you know what? Yeah, he did do some bad things. He did have a strong relationship with Putin, but at the end of the day, he won us 2 Champions Leagues, and that's when it becomes quite problematic, and that's when sports washing is in its full effect.
And so the fact that Newcastle, they're concerned if you open the lid of Pandora's box over human rights abuses back home, the Saudis could come under fire next.
Exactly, yeah, and I mean they're a much more recent purchase. This was last October, but because of where Saudi Arabia are in terms of their human rights, they have come under criticism. So the fact that this is happening to Chelsea, this suggests that they may fear what happens next to the club.
What about the players themselves? We talked a lot about the owners. Are there Russians, are there Ukrainians competing now in the Premier League? What are they saying as the war intensifies?
So there are 3 Ukrainian Premier League footballers. One plays for Everton, there is one for Manchester City, and one for West Ham. The West Ham player, Andrei Yarmolenko, he unfortunately missed quite a few games recently because, according to one of his teammates, he was an absolute mess when the invasion invasion happened, one of the footballers for Everton, Vitaly Mykolenko, he has only just signed for Everton. He spent his entire life in Kiev, and now he's only 22. He's had to go away from home, so you can imagine how hard this must be for him. So one thing that a lot of the Ukrainian footballers have done is they have decided to put some pressure on the Russian footballers. To my knowledge, I think only one Russian international, Fyodor Smolov, has spoken out against it. So they are hoping to put pressure on these players, and by putting pressure on these players, he's hoping that he can change the perspective of the Russian people.
All right, Joe Brown with the updates. Thanks so much for being with us here on Zoom In.
Thank you for having me.